Unit 4, Triangle Congruence, 4.1, we're going to talk about classifying triangles. So we've got 4 ways to classify a triangle based on its angle measures. An acute triangle is going to be a triangle that has all 3 angles acute angles. An equiangular triangle will then have all 3 angles being equal. And if all 3 angles are equal, then what would their measurement have to be? And the answer is that they're all going to be 60-degree angles. A right triangle is an angle with 1 right angle. Right, and an obtuse angle is going to have, an obtuse triangle is going to have exactly 1 obtuse angle. All right, so that is the 4 ways we can measure a triangle or classify a triangle based on its angle measurement. So either acute, where all 3 angles are acute; equiangular, all 3 angles are equal; right, a right triangle has exactly 1 right angle; and an obtuse triangle has exactly 1 obtuse angle. We can also classify triangles based on their sides. So if we think about equilateral, similar to equiangular, equilateral just means all sides are going to be equal. So their sides will be congruent, and then their side lengths are going to be equal. An isosceles triangle will have only 2 sides that are congruent. And the last one will be a scalene triangle, and these are triangles that have no sides that are congruent. So the 3 different types of triangles classified by their side lengths are going to be equilateral, when all 3 sides are congruent; isosceles, when 2 sides are congruent; and then scalene, when no sides are congruent. So the side lengths are all going to be different. So let's look at a question that we can answer based on this. So classify each triangle by its angle measure. And we're going to have 2 different classifications for part C. All right, so A has a 45, and a right angle. So therefore, we know that this is going to be a right triangle. Remember, we can use any of those 4 ways to classify it based on its measures. All right, in the part B, I see we've got a 30 degrees, 136 degrees, and a 14 degrees. So therefore, this one's going to be obtuse, since it's got 1 angle that is greater than 90. I see that all 3 angles are the same. So this one's going to be equiangular. But remember, this one has 2. Notice that all 3 angles are also less than 90. So this is going to be equiangular and an acute triangle. So equiangular ones will also be acute triangles. All right, and part D, a little bit tougher here. We're looking at first for triangle ABD. So that's going to be this blue one that we've got right here. And I see one side is 100 and one side is 50. So therefore, this one has to be an obtuse triangle, since one of those angles is greater than 90 degrees. Triangle ADC, which is going to be the full triangle right here, that red one. I kind of covered it up already, but there was this right angle box there, so then this one's going to be a right triangle since it's got 1 right angle. And BCD is going to be the other kind of medium-sized one right here. That one may be a little bit tougher, but I do know that these 2 angles, this green one and this blue one, are a linear pair, which means they're going to add up to 180. So if that blue angle is 100 degrees, then that green angle has to be 80 degrees. And I do know that this now green angle has to be less than 90 since it's part of a right angle, but it's not the whole thing. So therefore, all of those angles have to be less than 90, making this an acute triangle. Right, now let's classify it by its side lengths. So I see 2 tick marks right here. Highlight them in blue. So remember, those tick marks mean sides are congruent. So since 2 sides are congruent, this is going to be an isosceles triangle. All right, part B, I see that one of the sides is 1, one of the sides is 2, and one is 2.5. They're all different, which means we're going to have a scalene triangle since no sides are congruent. And then this one will be an equilateral triangle. But also notice that our definition of isosceles is 2 sides congruent. So since 2 sides are congruent, this is technically also an isosceles triangle. But remember that you make that it's going to be an equilateral as well, because it does have all 3 sides congruent, and equilateral is the best name for this triangle. All right, part D, GIJ. So that's going to be this full triangle. Before I get to coloring it, let me blacken in those tick marks so we can see them when I start covering them up. So that blue triangle, GIJ, I can tell that we've got 1 tick mark on this side, 2 tick marks on this side, so it's going to be twice the length, which is not equal. And then this one is completely different altogether at 6.9. So since none of those side lengths are the same, we'll have a scalene triangle. Triangle HIJ, that's in red here. So since all sides of HIJ have the red tick mark, or the black tick mark through it, I know that this is going to be an equilateral triangle. So again, if you want to call that isosceles, you can, but make sure you also include equilateral. That's the best name for it. And then last, we've got GHJ in green. And since 2 of the sides, HJ right here and GH, have black tick marks, and the other side is 6.9, then this one's going to be isosceles since exactly 2 sides are congruent. So hopefully you feel pretty good about classifying triangles based on their angles or their side lengths.